Hello, welcome to the Guardsman's Bunk Warhammer 40k podcast. My name is Smicky, and it's just me today. My co-host is not here, which is kind of nice, because today we're going over a topic that I don't think he really likes, the Adeptus Mechanicus. Now, unfortunately, Cross can't be here for this episode, but nothing changes. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and remember to finger your computer. The Omnissiah would very much love that. Alright, so let's get into the AdMech, right? So, there's no really good way of starting it, so I'm gonna start off with a quote, right? A very basic quote, alright? One that I have made up for myself. And what is this quote, you may ask? I do not fuck toasters. I have body dysmorphia. Therefore, I change myself so that I have a USB for a cock. Okay, no. The AdMech are memed on a lot, I think, in the Warhammer 40k universe, but in true fashion of this podcast, I think we're going to go into a bit deeper of what AdMech really is within the Warhammer 40k community. And so this is going to be a quick overview, and we're going to talk about the meat and like the story you should take away from the AdMech. But if you really want to deep dive into, what is their different vehicles, what are the different augments, go check Luton or check Adric. I'm not that. I like the preliminary research, and then I spitballed everything. Alright, so let's get into the AdMech. The Adeptus Mechanicus are a branch-off faction of humanity. They are generally considered the left hand of everything that happens within the Imperium, right? So they are a separate branch off of humanity, similar to how Space Marines are a bit of a separate branch of humanity, like they're abhumans, but they serve the Imperium as a whole. Like they're arguably an independent faction. I would argue that they are kind of an independent faction, but in fairness, most of their worlds are beholden to some form of the Imperium's will, right? They have their own religion, which is a bit separate from the Imperial cult. That's kind of grown in parallel and still revolves around the worship of the Emperor, but not specifically the Emperor. Think of, for those of you who can't visualize it, think of Christian denominations and the difference between Catholicism, Protestants, and Eastern Orthodox, right? It's just a different form, right? Kind of. So they're part of a techno-fascistic cult that worships the machine god and what they call the essence divine. We'll get into that later, right? One thing to note, and I will be mentioning this throughout the whole episode, they are like horrible people. They're considered like the most immoral group in the Imperium, besides like maybe an insane inquisitor, right? Like a major part of their belief is that they believe that the pursuit of knowledge is totally divine, meaning that you put it in front of everything. That includes human life, which is quite terrifying when you learn later to what extent they're willing to sacrifice. Alright, so let's get into some of the little bit of meaty bits, right? So similar to the pursuit of the Christian faith and spreading of the word of God, or the Buddhist pursuit of inner peace, their religious pursuit is to understand all of the universe. However, there's one issue with this, like understanding the universe. That sounds really cool. That sounds super enlightening, right? But it's not through personal exploration or development. No. That is heresy. No, it must be through the revealing of the universe through old technology, STCs, old dark age of technology blueprints, information that was long lost. We'll get into STCs later. They're very important. And this sort of mentality kind of makes them a bit interesting. But imagine a group of people who are Okay, have you ever met an atheist who is so entrenched in the idea that everything can be explained to the point where it swings around to like almost addiction, right? Like to almost unreasoning, right? Like I have a few atheist friends. I find them quite tolerable, right? I'm talking about the people who are almost completely insane, right? Like not only do they not believe in God, but they believe that nothing exists beyond this universe. I met some people like that before. I don't know how to explain it. They're super entrenched in their ideals. That's what I'm trying to say. Nothing bad about atheists. I'm just talking about like those people who are so entrenched in their ideology. Right? This is like that entrenched religious atheistic expression. That kind of illustrates what the AdMech is about. They modulate their bodies to the extreme. Like if we look at this photo here, this guy has a thing. It's called a servo skull, right? It's essentially a human skull with a living human brain inside of it, still awake, that's being used to computate information, right? And it's feeding into this guy who has let's count 1, 2, 3, 4 arms. He has an axe that I think is called, I don't know, I think it's called the Axe of Mars. I don't know. I can only remember that on the tabletop, it's like, it's, I think it's okay. I don't know if it's really good. I know the ad mech was broken a long time ago. I don't play tabletop all that often, right? But you look at the closest thing to look at is his face, right? You might think this is like a mask or anything. No, 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 no. I'm sorry. No, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eyes, and that's his mouth. And you're thinking, oh, you're just over exaggerating. Like, obviously that can't be his face. No, that's his face. The tubes are like breathing tubes. They modulate themselves to the extreme. They change the nature of their physiology through augmetics and the blessed machine, because one of the core tenets of their belief is the flesh is weak. We'll get into some of this later, and it ties into a message that comes through the story, and I think is very revealing for a lot of us. But it's like kind of it's whatever, right? So I really okay. One thing before we move on, I think I really like their design. If you, but for those of you who are a bit confused, they have like this steampunk, like metallurgy kind of vibe. Like it's arcane, but it has science in it, and that's kind of cool. Right. So let's move on. Right. So they let's get into the history of the Adamec. Right. So the Adamec were originally humans on Mars. They were the first outpost of human colonization, and therefore had really strong connections to Earth. Like think about it. I think it is in either it's this year, correct? It's either 2026 or 2027. NASA is sending another mission up to the moon. Imagine, uh, say maybe about 2 or 3 years from now, NASA sent the first few humans onto the moon to colonize it, and then they established a base. Those people on the moon are still humans, and they're still intrinsically their culture is still from Earth, but they're just living on another planet. That was how Mars was, kind of. It is essentially the first human outpost. They didn't really have their culture at the time. It was just a kind of byproduct of the Imperium, which is kind of cool, right? The AdMech were they terraformed their planet, right? So, if those of you who don't know the scientific term of terraforming, it is where you take a planet and um use well, I guess you use off-planet means sometimes, but most of the time you use like uh quote unquote terraforming machines, right? If we were to terraform, I think it was Venus, we would um we would reduce its I don't want to embarrass myself, but if I remember correctly, watching some like Kurzgesagt video, it was we reduced the amount of greenhouse gases within the environment, which allows for adequate heat regulation on the planet, and then we terraform the surface to allow for like arable land. I think that was the idea, but I'm not sure. Somebody don't correct me in the comments. I want to refuse and say that I am right. So they terraformed Mars and it became a garden planet. And I mean, that's fair, right? Like, you don't want to live in suffering, right? But one of the things that came with the garden planet was that people had a bit too easy. And if you don't know the quote, good times create weak men, right? Essentially, this like Warhammer 40k itself. Mars had a civil war, and then they took a bunch of nukes, and then they solved the problems via nukes. It was very impressive. It was also quite terrifying for many people who thought that this was going to be the end of Mars, right? During this time, there were also massive warp storms. If you don't know what warp storms are, they are incursions from the warp into reality, right? Non reality into reality, which in of itself is kind of paradoxical, but non-reality into reality, that's quite terrifying, right? And this happened galaxy-wide. This was called the Age of Strife. That will be like a whole nother video. It's to sum up, warp storms happened, psychers happened. uh AI before this had a revolt, but I don't want to get too far into that. It was bad times. It was really, really bad times. And then Mars was cut off from Earth. Everybody was like fucked up in like a bad way, like in a bad way. But it was it was to say that it was quite a struggle, especially for everybody on Mars, because not only had they nuked themselves, but they were also experiencing warp exposure, and they were going through psychers, and they didn't know how to handle this, so they retreated into their underground bunkers on Mars. Now, those underground bunkers on Mars acted as a form of habitation for them, because obviously, in a world that is Fallout esque, uh, it is not very good. Not very good to say the least. And so this actually, interestingly, paradoxically, sort of changed the mindset of Mars. Like, the you must understand, before 40k, humanity was a very diverse species with a lot of diverse beliefs and ideas, and that's how we were able to advance so quickly. But because of the situations that they were put in, Mars was suddenly struck with a very, very, very difficult situation of trying to find a way out for themselves. And so they started, as all reasonable people do, looking at their toasters and going, I'm going to pray to that. Now, obviously, I over exaggerate. It is that they viewed their living systems at first as very important, and the people who are in charge of those living systems as of the utmost importance. And then that slowly degraded and escalated into full on worship of machines, right? They began to change as well in order to fit their environment. If any of you know what happens when you are exposed to, I think it's short wave. No, no, it is. If you're exposed to long wave radiation, your skin cells and the cells in your body begin to mutate due to your I think it's your genetic code being altered and damaged in a way that it cannot repair itself properly. That's why people who are exposed to large amounts of radiation get cancer, right? So the Adamec, being the reasonable people that they are, now fucking toasters, believe that yes, it is a good idea now let's become machines, right? Like, not find a solution to cancer, not find a suit that can prevent us from getting cancer. How do we get from step 1 to step 100 by skipping all the steps? Let's just remove the arm and put a gun on it. Why? I don't know. And it got crazy. They started replacing body parts and began worshipping a thing called the Holy Trinity, right? The Omnissiah, the machine god, and the motive force, right? It is the way that they made the machine and the sacred processes that kept the machine alive, or working at least, revered. And uh, okay, now should be a note that I should make. It's been shown that religion and superstition is one of the ways that mankind has kept a lot of important information around and I guess intact in a sense. Um, an example would be in proto-Judaic, proto-Mesopotamian, well, I guess proto-Judaic society, right? As in religions like Islam and Judaism and Christianity, specifically Judaism and Islam, they both they both ban the eating of pigs, and this is, well, at least in my head canon, it's theorized that pigs at that time were very difficult to sterilize because of the horrid living conditions that humans were required to keep them in. Pigs couldn't be kept in a way that made their flesh safe to consume. Therefore, humans had to find a way to prevent them and future generations from eating that. Now, you could go ahead and argue, oh, but you could do it in writing. But let's argue this. If I write something down, say if I write a big message on a signboard in front of a nuclear silo that has gone critical, and I say in English, do not enter, this is dangerous, nuclear radiation ahead. Skip forward 2,000, 3,000 years. Who knows if they speak English? Who knows if they speak any languages at all? If they, or at least languages that we know, if we look at it, it might be, they might just not understand it completely. The sign will be completely useless. However, one way to maintain their not only religiousness but their society as a whole, society at large, would be to use practices that are repeated throughout an individual's lives to reinforce a specific behavior. And so it is kind of theorized that one of the ways that humans remember and ingrain ideas into themselves is through religion. So this sort of real world example, like what foods are quote unquote impure religiously, but actually have a legitimate reasoning that they could not understand, but they understood was, if consumed, was dangerous, or certain practices that either endangered or reduced the population of a society, or endangered the general people in society at large, such as murder, rape, uh, incest, and I guess, well, I was about to say polygamy, but I mean that's only Christianity, so I'm not sure. Whatever. You get the idea. These practices ensure that the society could stay alive. I want you to take that concept and let's bring it back to the AdMech. I want you to take that concept and apply it back to the AdMech. Essentially, for the AdMech, this maintenance of machines like the maintaining of a machine. They don't understand how it works. That's very critical for everybody to understand. They barely understand how it works. They can understand it through religious practice alone, right? They understand that. So, say if we gave them a fusion reactor, that's something that exists in uh, Space Marine 2. I think one of the missions is to blow up his reactor in a ship. It's a really cool mission. If you guys play Space Marine 2, go find that mission. It's like you go onto a Tyranid infested hive ship and then you blow it up. The cinematics are really good. Your computer will explode, but it's a really good game, right? Similarly, if you give them, we get back to the topic, if you give them an engine, right, they will look at it and understand it in the way of religious practice, instead of like, oh, I need to, I need to check the cylinders, oh, I need to clear out the oil intake or the air intake, right? Instead, they would take the engine and they would perform several rituals like blessing, praying, spraying of sacred oils, right? And then they would do the processes to keep the machine going as they remember it in the religious manner that they were taught, right? So they'll go over the thing like once, twice, thrice, checking that it matches this holy scripture or this holy scripture, and all the while praying and spraying sacred oils again. And then they'll close it up and then they'll pray over it again, then they'll put it back in the machine, and then the engine will start running. That is how they're able to keep it up. This, however, does not maintain all of it. Similar to how people back then couldn't fully understand why pigs being kept in a very filthy environment were very dangerous to eat, be it from the transmissible diseases within their waste or them transferring zoonotic diseases due to them festering in their filth, right? Similarly to that, the Adamec don't understand how the machine works. They understand the core tenets of how to keep it working. They don't understand how it works in general. That's very important to me. So this leads to inaccuracies and exaggerations of unnecessary things. And this causes a lot of convolution, right? One of the things that everybody talks about the AdMech is that the AdMech are very inefficient. They're highly inefficient. Not only are they like genuinely deplorable, they are highly inefficient and very, very, very weird because of these inaccuracies. And it's this religious dogma that they can't get out of that's super weird. Right? This devolving of them has created a interesting situation where they are unable to see literally beyond the bridge of their nose, right? They don't understand why people view them as like wrong because to them in their mind they're doing right by their god. So i.e. they're the ones correct in the room. This uh this kind of got overblown a bit to the point where they started worshiping the gods, right? Their god, at least. When the emperor in, I think, the 31st millennium came around to Mars, it was to the effect that he wasn't some sort of human savior. He was seen as a prophet and messiah. Now we should get into what the Omnissiah and the tech priests believe in. Right? So a lot of people get turned around by the term tech priests, Omnissiah, machine god, a motive force. Right? So this is the definition by the Warhammer Wiki. According to the Cult Mechanicus, technology is a higher form of life than that created by cruder physical processes such as biological evolution. Only a divine source could have inspired the perfection of form and function attainable in machines. This divine source is the machine God. The machine God is not understood in the sense of some Terran Abrahamic religious traditions, like the personal God, um, i.e., Allah or Yahweh, right? The machine God is not a person, but rather a spiritual force immanent in the universe. For unspecified reasons, it has appointed humanity as its chosen people and reveals its true designs and mathematics and machines to them through selected prophets. In order to interact with the physical world, it has also prophesied to create a physical avatar within the realm of man called the Omnissiah. Think about it, it's like Messiah, right? Like the name sounds like Messiah. In addition to the machine god and its Omnissiah, there was a third member of the cult Mechanicus. The cult Mechanicus' divine trinity. This was called the motive force, an ineffable and invisible divine power or spirit said to exist throughout the universe that was responsible for the ability of all life, whether it was mechanical or flesh, to move of its own accord. So, to simplify it a little bit, because I know that was a lot of words, think of it in a Christian context. The machine God is Yahweh, like the actual God. The Omnissiah is the Messiah, like Jesus, his ultimate prophet and physical representative given flesh. And the motive force is the Holy Spirit, the hand of both the Omnissiah and the machine God, as like the hand by which both of them act on humanity through. Right? So, now that we sort of clarified the air, we can get into a bit more of the history and kind of help you understand, right? So, Terra and Mars were united under the Treaty of Olympus Mons, which was sealed in the Imperial Aquila, the double-headed eagle of Mars and Earth. This united both sections of humanity and under one banner, kind of, and under irrefutable proof. So, one thing to note is that the Imperial Aquila is not the only symbol of Mars. On most AdMech stuff, you will see this cog with a skull on it. That's the symbol of the Adeptus Mechanicus, right? Similarly here, right? The planet of Mars was converted into the first forged world of the Imperium, right? It was already a very industrialized society because once they had escaped their bunkers, they were already so inundated with technology, they began to reflect that onto Mars and so began building fortress worlds, right? And so Mars was converted into a fourth world, which is essentially a hellscape of machinery and industrial plants that just produce billions and billions of simple and complicated machines for the Imperium for either their war effort or for their quality of life, right? During the Great Crusade, they took a lot of planets, with many of them falling under the jurisdiction of Mars and the Cult Mechanicum. The Cult Mechanicum became the second most powerful force within the Imperium and was a major twin on most worlds and deployments, right? So if you can imagine, not only is the Imperial Army and the Adeptus Astartes, Adeptus Custodes acting in like the Great Crusade, the Cult Mechanicum and the Mechanicus, as they were known at that time, the Mechanicus, not the Adeptus Mechanicus, both of them worked side by side and went forward and expanded during the Great Crusade. They also, the Cult Mechanicum also had their hands in Space Marines. And I mean, some of you are asking now, uh, how does that work, right? Because the Space Marines are atheists, right? Well, a certain section of them were required to become machine cultists. for lack of a better term, in order to uh, interface with the machines, right? So Mars essentially told Earth that they would help them expand the repertoire of Space Marines, if I can. Oh, okay. Mars approached Terra in a way of like saying that if they were able to help convert some normal space marines into, say, marine engineers, right? Astartes into Astartes engineers, they would be able to uh, not need they would not need to be attached to the hip with the Astartes vessels and the Astartes ships at the time. And for that was a big thing because the Astartes were huge fleets. They were massive fleets, and Astartes gear is very complicated. So they would need like millions of tech priests per deployment because they would need to maintain the ship, maintain the armor, maintain the gear. And so that sort of like convenience sort of convinced Terra to send some Astartes over to Mars. And conveniently during that time, because of the way that Mars worked, the Astartes were converted into essentially Astartes tech priests. It takes a while, but they slowly become inducted into what's called the cult of Mars. Right? So the Tech Marines appeared, and specifically the Iron Hands, the 10th Legion, they had a lot of close connections with the Mechanicus that sort of got really insane, especially near the end of the heresy, and definitely into the 31st to 42nd millennium, right? Into present day 40K. During the Horus Heresy, which I'm gonna be honest, I think if what was it, 1000 the 1000 subscriber episode. I think if you guys want me to do any event, I think for the sake of everybody, I think it would be better if we go over the Horus Heresy. I won't settle that in stone yet, but I think that is a good idea. And so after the let's get back on topic. After the Horus Heresy and after everything that happened, it we get the Mechanicus that we have today, which in the 42nd millennium is a dogmatic cult. They have entrenched themselves even harder and have become less and less enlightened, crunching themselves into non human, psychopathic uh, machines, essentially. They have reduced themselves to machines. And they are barely comprehensible of what it means to be human anymore. There's this interesting note that I found was that in the Necron in the Mechanicus game, you hear Necrons and they're speaking basic Gothic, and you think that it's just you translating. But then when you listen to uh, a Mechanicus speak, it's all binary squawk, right? That's the example of how far the Mechanicus have fallen. Right? Let's move on to a bit of their biology, right? So the mindset of the Mechanicus. This is very important. They're first and foremost priests, right? Their most important guys are tech priests. They're devout in worshiping the Mechanicum. So gods in 40K kind of work by what I call Instagram celebrity rules, right? As long as there is an individual that is praising the god, that god gains power. So for the chaos gods, they feed off of the negative emotions within society. Similarly to the emperor, who has this is argued, but it has been argued that he has ascended to the level of godhood, right? Similarly, the uh, the Mechanicus, because of their worship, have ascended to have ascended the machine god to almost a actual deity, right? They're not the full on like imperial cult. Some say they're feeding the emperor, but it's uh, it's a blessing either way, right? They have blessings either way. The Mechanicus worship the machine spirit in the way that is, I would say, rather than like the cult like fanaticism of the imperial cult, they are more they're more like religiously dogmatic, right? Like if you imagine how some very, very, very hardcore religious people act, right? Like priests, like monks. Like monks. And then this actually leads them to doing some crazy things. They actually perform miracles. So, one of the things that they do is that they can make machines work even for way longer and work way better than they ever should, right? By prayers and by sanctification, right? And this doesn't mean like, oh, maintenance or anything. Like, this is just straight up like the machine works better because of it, right? It's very impressive. Their their practices make them kind of reviled by the Imperium. That's something that everybody should know. They're kind of reviled by the Imperium, but they're also needed as well. So everybody just kind of keeps them around. They will do anything to accomplish their mission. That is their number one goal. They are always in the look for STCs and ancient technology. We should explain what STCs are. STCs are standard template constructs. They are AI databases that are developed from artificial intelligence. However, the artificial intelligence that has been developed is very weird. The artificial intelligence that is developed has broken down, and it is now only like a blueprint of what it was able to produce. So, like when mankind set out into the stars, they had these things with them, but over 10,000 years, they've degraded 10,000, 20,000 years. Right? They, because of this, and you must understand, STCs are very important. They can, it is the only way that the Mechanicus can access new technology. So, them getting STCs is like of the utmost importance. They are almost 100% logical, right? So they will act like a machine, right? They will march in lockstep and they won't make any battle cries. They won't say anything. If they enter into war, they will just shoulder their rifles, bang, 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 bang. Everything's dead, turn around, walk away. It's so weird, right? The day we get into the deathcore, I think you'll understand how weird the Mechanicus are. Not saying that the Mechanicus and deathcore are related, but I'm saying that they act like each other, right? They are rather they act super uncanny. They feel super uncanny. So let's get into the biology of a Mechanicus. So, a Mechanicus priest is most of the time they are cyborgs and machines, with most tech priests being mostly machine. So one of the things that tech priests are very well known for is that take they will take apart somebody else's mind and reinstall it into theirs. This guy in the slides, his name is Belisarius Call. He has subjugated like I think over a dozen people and subjugated them into his mind in subminds. And basically, what it does is that it helps him process information faster because these individual subminds are able to complete a certain. They're able to help him complete certain tasks without him having his main mind having to fully focus on it. Right? It's very twisted because the individual is still alive, but they are subjugated. But it is a very effective way of controlling it. Right? One of the things that you must note about tech priests is that they have no conscience, right? Tech priests do not have a qualm against killing people, random people, right? They have these tech priests are usually in charge of like machinery on planets, servitorization, servitors. If you don't know what servitors are, that's a whole episode. They're essentially lobotomized humans that are still alive but are forced to undergo certain programming. Right? There could be anything like a door servitor, a toilet servitor. Right? It's all crazy. They are the people that they used to be. These tech priests. They're mostly vat grown, and they aren't very critical of life expenditure because of the way that they're produced and the way that they've grown up, especially on a forge world or on Mars. Right? They're one thing to note about a tech priest is that they are usually just a normal person, but taken and they're changed to an extreme level. Like their blood will be replaced by sanctified machine oils. They'll replace most of their inner organs with like life enhancing or life extending machinery like a replacement lung, replacement heart. Eventually they'll lose their skin. And most ancient tech priests, especially those that have been around since heresy, are essentially just a brain at this point, and maybe not even that. Like some of them might just straight up be AI, which, by the way, is heretical, but you don't tell them that. It's the concept of it is that they sort of ship the Theseus themselves all the way to the point where some of them might not be human anymore, which is the cool part of the faction, which is they're human, but it's super dystopia, right? They are they are the epitome of what it means to be a mechanicus, right? To lose that flesh on you, to lose any part of your soul, and to become a robot, to become a machine. And that in itself, it's like digging away at your soul. It's a very interesting conversation. And this will play into some of the parts that we talk about later, right? They they represent some very interesting things about the human psyche. Right? Let's move on to the next bit because we kind of just finished with the tech priests already. All you need to know is they're the religious leaders. They're like the leaders of the priesthood and the adepts and everything. The next thing we should talk about are the Skitari Vanguard. So the Skitari Vanguard are the Skitari Vanguard are under the tech priest. Uh, One thing we should know about tech priests and Skitari as a whole is that they're very secretive and like aggressively religious, maintaining a lot of important functions within like the Imperium and on a planet. Think about it like a each individual forge world that the Adeptus Mechanicus owns, they are like small branches of a much larger tech firm, which is like the Adepts of Mars, right? That is the major tech firm, and then all of that feeds into the the major, I guess, overarching economy that is the Greater Imperium as a whole, right? The Skitari are the PMCs and the security guards of this faction, right? They are the major fighting force of the Mechanicus and considered the fist of the Omnissiah, right? They are the strongest fighting force, second to the Knights and the Legio Titanicus, and they're mostly armored in strange and insane vehicles, like the okay, this is very important. Iron Strider Belisarius. So this is the Iron Strider Bell. We call it the Chicken Walker, right? The Chicken Walker. It has the Chicken Walker is very interesting because it has a perpetual engine. If you don't know what a perpetual engine is, and for those of you who don't know physics, um, it's essentially a impossibility, but a and a perpetual engine just like continually produces energy as long as it is running, right? It's very weird. They they have somehow managed to MacGyver a Iron Strider. The Iron Strider Belisarius has a perpetual engine in it, but the issue with the engine is that th- they don't know how to turn it off. That's the thing. Like a perpetual engine needs to keep running. They don't know how to turn the Iron Strider's engine off. And so the Skitarii, what they'll do is that they'll like cowboy uh bunko themselves onto like a Iron Strider, get onto a chicken walker, and then they'll like corral them in a big herd, and then they'll ride them into battle like horses, right? It's really dumb. The reason that happened was because the only tech priest that had the data prints for the Iron Strider died. That was a big problem, right? And that kind of shows like the deterioration of the Adeptus Mechanicus as a whole. The interesting thing is that the AdMech are essentially automata. They treat their Skitarii legions like automata, and their Skitarii legions don't care, right? Like this machine, I can't remember what its name is, but this machine right here, inside of this cockpit is a Skitarii legionnaire, right? But the way that the machine works is that essentially feeds off the guy to like make itself better, and in doing so kills the guy. But the Skitarii don't care because they're robots, right? And I think that's the most scary thing about the AdMech, especially when you're fighting them, is that they just don't care about human life, right? So they will continue to throw themselves at you until they like win. And so that is the Skitarii. But the Skitarii aren't the only thing, right? We talked about the Titan Legios, and I'm gonna be honest, like a lot of things in this video, the Titan Legios are gonna be the whole thing, such as well as the siege engines. But the Titan Legios are essentially they're like what you would see in a they're a titan, right? They're a gigantic walking machine on two legs that has a lot of guns and a lot of firepower, is really, 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 really big, and will beat the shit out of you, right? Both Chaos and the Imperium both have titans, and to show you the scale, the Tau, which are an alien species that are a close approximation to what we are right now, the Tau had a encounter with the Titan Legios, and they were struggling to understand what they thought that it wasn't real because they thought that no nation, no empire would waste that much energy and resources to build one, let alone like 100 million of them, right? Until one Imperator class Titan showed up and just flattened the field, right? The Titans are scary. The Titans are genuinely scary, and most, if not all of them, are under the command of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their smaller brethren are the Imperial Knights. Like the Titans, they're going to be another episode in and of themselves. They're essentially a bit smaller, but they're still very impressive nonetheless, right? Like I said, both Chaos and the Imperium both have knights. And they're sort of this chivalric, sort of steampunk esque uh, machine that is like 60, 70 feet tall. No, not 60, 70 feet tall. They're like 30 to 50 feet tall. The biggest one's getting up to like this guy, which is like 110 feet tall. And they are generally responsible for like the main battles of all, for most of the Imperium. They're very impressive. They're very impressive to say the least. I think that the knights are like one of my favorite factions to like look at and like write about, but they are they are a bit they're they have a very specific aesthetic. If you don't like the aesthetic, well, I can't convince you otherwise, right? they work alongside the Mechanicus and everybody work alongside the Imperium a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, they act independently, but most of the time they work with the Imperium. Now, this is a very important thing. This is a very interesting thing. Now we get to talk about the purpose of the Mechanicus in the lore, right? The Mechanicus in the lore, they serve a very specific function, right? The Mechanicus are well, every faction in Warhammer 40k is a reflection of because Warhammer 40k evolved around the 80s era of superheroes and superhero movies. It reflected a aspect of like the human, but I think more specifically the male psyche, right? And the adepts of Mars are body dysmorphia and the idea of pain, right? Like every guy goes to the gym. Every guy goes to the gym to make himself bigger, better, like improve himself, better his physical health, better his physique. For those of you who I guess work in the military or are in the police or any sort of public service that involves physicality, you'll understand that it requires, or construction, it requires you to keep your body to a certain level, right? And to reach that level, you must experience pain, right? That pain is not innately bad. But what the Adeptus Mechanicus reflect to us is what happens when we let that pain define us. The adepts of Mars alter themselves because they don't want to feel that weakness, that pain of flesh, right? They reject everything that is human because they don't want to feel that that strange suffering in and of themselves. And so they strip their flesh, they strip their body, they change themselves, they stop being human to stop feeling the pain. But one thing that the adepts of Mars, I think people need to understand and learn from the adepts of Mars, is that the pain is part of the pain being part of the struggle is not bad in and of itself. Pain is a reflection to you of how stressed your body is. Like I was talking to one of my friends who's in medical school, and he was like, yeah, that there is a I think his word was there is an equivalent of that in medical school, and it's mitochondrial uh, exhaustion or something like that, where the body overworks itself so much that the mitochondria get really tired. But by doing that exercise, you strengthen not only your respiratory system, not only your circulatory system, but your immune system as well. And that in and of itself is part of the process of developing, right? But the Adeptus Mechanicus shows a very twisted version. Like the pain hurts. Obviously, the pain hurts. And these guys push themselves to a point where they cannot recognize the pain anymore. Then that becomes the issue. Because pain is an innate part of the human psyche. Pain is an innate part of our experience as people. And so to experience pain is one of the most human things you can. To remove pain from yourself is like pulling the wool over your eyes. It's faking yourself, thinking that you're stronger, right? What I'm saying is that the Adeptus Mechanicus is a reflection for, I think, an introspective reflection for a lot of guys. When you, and I know that some people, I know that I've been in this position before, where people feel like they aren't strong enough. They don't feel good enough. Like every morning they wake up and they're reminded of that same failure over and over again. Maybe multiple failures back to back to back to back to back. And then they feel like, oh, I'm not strong enough. I have to beat myself and injure myself to feel stronger, to hate that pain, right? This is the epitome of that feeling. This they act as a parallel to the Imperium and a point of comparison to all of us. Whereas the Imperium is a religious dogmatic cult, the Mechanicus is a more innate human reflection of a broken human psyche. People who are willing to go to such an extreme and destroy everybody around them so they don't feel that way. I think a lot of the quotes is the interesting quotes is that especially for people who are entering Warhammer 40k is that there are no good guys at 40k. I think this is wrong. There's no good guys in life. There are never good people in life. Every good person in life has always done something wrong. Every good person, well, okay, I'm Christian, so every good person except Jesus has done some sort of sin, right? Everybody is some sort of messed up. But Warhammer is a story of adversity and triumph of the individual man. What does the man mean to you? What does the man mean to all of us? What does it mean to strive and struggle every day despite the pain? The Adepts of Mars are a poignant story for us of what happens when you let that pain get hold of you, right? When you let it run away. They are a poignant reflection that no matter what, we do not succeed because of what we do as people. We succeed because of the decisions that we make as people. The things that we do are an innate reflection of our psyche. We are not strong because, oh, we were born this way or we were given this at birth. No, it's we are strong innately because of what the world and what God has given us, what the universe, what hand we have been dealt with by the universe, and how we are going to play that hand. The Adepts of Mars are a poignant discussion on how you can twist that hand. You could say how the universe hates you, and so you must burn off the gifts that the universe has. Right? I think that a good way to end this episode would be to discuss what it means to understand what the Adepts of Mars are. They're not techno, like I keep saying this, they're horrible people, they're techno fascists, right? They're also broken. They're fundamentally broken psychologically. I personally like to believe that there is a little bit of good in every single person, that people genuinely try every single day to make themselves better, to try a little bit better. Sure, some people aren't like that, I have to acknowledge, but I want to believe most people are like that. The Adepts of Mars are like that. They're trying to keep the machine moving forward, but they don't know how. And because of their broken psyche and because of the way that they've grown up, they just keep digging themselves into this pit of despair, right? They are a reflection of body dysmorphia and depression in men, I think. But they are also the reflection of what we can do. They are an example of what happens if we let it get away. We are not born like this. No adept is born like this. We can always be better. That is the point. Warhammer is not to show you the better. It is to show you what it means to be wrong and why you need to be better. You can be better. For God's sakes, everybody knows how to be better, right? Everybody knows how to be a good person, right? But what does it mean to be? What does it? Why do you want to be a good person? Why do you want to keep trying every day to force your way through the pain, even if it hurts? That is the story of the Adepts of Mars, and that is the end of today's episode. Thank you for watching. Hold on, we need to do an outro.
Hello, it is me, Smiggy. After the episode, thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to us here at Guardsman's Bunk that we're able to get the support that we can from the community. I mean, 20 views is honestly a lot for both of us because it's just two adolescent kids ranting about their hyperfixation on Warhammer and its effects on modern day media and literature and masculinity. But besides that, it's just a fun hobby that we decided to take up, and it's the fact that we're able to get support from you guys. So it means a lot to us. Thank you so much. The announcements. We're gonna change the announcements a bit because we had to set our goals, reasonable goals. So after a few episodes, I think we're gonna start doing Primarch proper deep dives at about 100 subscribers. I think we'll start doing any event that you guys want. So we'll do any event that you guys want, whether it be the Horus Heresy, whether it be Bad Ab War, Notman Gauntlet, Age of Strife, Age of Apostasy, Reign of Blood maybe, but it's a bit separate. To us, it doesn't really matter. We'll do it at 100 subscribers. At 500 subscribers, we'll do character deep dive, which could mean literally any chapter. If you guys want to, we could do an Emperor episode, which would be insane, but we could do it. And I think at about 1,000 subscribers, I will get my leather bit and my straitjacket, and I will sit down and bear a 3-hour episode of Cross ranting about the One Piece and how it's real. And I don't know about that, but I mean, yeah, that's something we could do. All right, well, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. We's gonna wow. She wore on my beast till I saw her. Wait.